Hello everyone, myself Professor Chavan. We have started our first chapter from the 11th Science CBSE board for the subject physics. We have seen some topics like what is inner world, what is the outer world. Then we have seen what is the scientific method and which are the steps of the scientific method. Then we have seen which are the facts of nature that we must have to follow. Okay. Now today we will see the next topic, that is the principal thrust in physics. Principal thrust in physics means what? इसका मतलब क्या है? What is the principal thrust in physics? Thrust means the areas of the physics. Okay. Likewise, for studying any subject, we have to follow some certain procedures. If we have to study Sanskrit, then we have to practice more and make the pronunciations clear. Okay. If we have to study the English, then we have to read more and more literature on the English. Then we can be one clear in our that subject. Okay. So likewise, for studying the physics, which method should be followed or on which part one must have to concentrate to study the physics. So this part is divided into two parts, and that parts are known as the thrust areas of the physics. Okay. So generally the physics is very complex subject, but we have to make it easy to understand by dividing it into the two main thrust areas. Okay. So the unification and the reductionism are the two main thrust areas of the physics. So what is the unification? First one we will see what is the unification. Okay. In case of a unification, the efforts are made to make the number of phenomena to be working under a one single law. Okay. There are number of phenomena available in this nature which are working on one single law. So we have to study these all phenomena under one single law. जैसे कि हमने देखा है कि एप्पल अपने पेड़ से नीचे गिरता है और पानी ऊपर से नीचे गिरता है और अर्थ सन के अराउंड घूमती रहती है. तो फिर इन सब चीजों में एक ही लॉ कॉमन है. कौन सा लॉ है वो? इट इज द ग्रेविटेशनल लॉ. ओके. Which are the examples of gravitational law? The earth moving around the sun, then the apple falling on the ground from the tree, then the water falling down from the top. These are the some examples of the gravitational force. And if we see these all phenomena are working on one single law, that is the gravitational law. So instead of going for studying all the phenomena separately, if we study one single phenomena and apply whatever the research we have studied on that phenomena to all the phenomena which are working on the same principle, which are working on the same law of nature, then it will be beneficial one. Because if we study each phenomenon separately, then we have to create its own law separately. We have to remember its own rules separately. Okay. But nature is a very vast. Nature is a very complex. It is having the number of phenomena. So how many number of phenomena? That much number of laws, that much number of rules we have to remember. Okay. So it is a very difficult one process. So instead of going for that process for remembering the number of laws for that respective phenomena, we have made some group of phenomena which are working under one single law, which are working under one single rule. Okay. So what is the unification? It is the making of group of the phenomena. Efforts are made to make one single group of phenomena which are working on one single law, which are working on one single law. Which law? Law of nature. Okay, we have seen like example, apple falling on the ground, then if we see the earth revolving around the sun, or one more example, we will take water falling from the top. So these all examples are working on one single rule, that is the gravity law. Okay, these all phenomena are working on one single law, that is the gravity law. So we have made these all phenomena which are working on one single law into one single group, and whenever we have to go for study any one phenomenon out of these, we just study only one phenomenon. We are checking just one phenomenon, and accordingly we are making the changes in other phenomena. Okay, so instead of remembering the number of laws, instead of remembering the number of rules separately, we are remembering just one rule for all the phenomena which are working on one single group. Okay, so accordingly we have made one group and of the phenomena which are working on one single law of nature. Okay, so accordingly we have to study the physics in case of the unification thrust area. Okay, this is the one thrust area of the physics which makes us easy to understand the physics, to study the physics. Okay, so this is the in case of a unification, in which we have to make one single group of phenomena, and accordingly we can consider that they are working on one single law. Okay, whatever the cause of that law, that cause of law will be common to all the phenomena in that single group. Okay, so this is about the unification, and next one is the reductionism. Okay, so what is the reductionism? In case of a reductionism, as the name suggests, that we have to study the complex processes of the physics, then it will be very easier to study the smaller part of that complex process instead of studying the total complex process at a one single time. Okay, so what is the reductionism? In case of reductionism, what we can define the reductionism is, the efforts are made to study larger process or complex process dividing it into its smaller constituents Okay. Efforts are made to study the larger process or the complex process, divided it into smaller constituent and study these smaller constituents separately. Okay. And study these smaller constituents separately, so it will be easier for us to go one by one process in case of a complex processes. Okay, so likewise we can define the reductionism as the efforts are made to study the larger processes or the complex processes, dividing it into its smaller constituents and study these smaller constituents separately. So it will be easy for us. We can apply the single law to each smaller constituents. We can apply the single law to each smaller process. So accordingly we can apply our laws of the nature separately for each smaller part instead of applying all the laws combinedly on one single complex process. Okay, so what we have to do in reductionism, just we have to reduce the larger process into its smaller constituents, and we have to apply whatever the laws of nature, whatever the rules of nature on which that process is working, and study these processes separately. Okay, so it will be easy one to understand that total complex process in physics. Okay, so we are making our study, we are making our work simple by doing this reductionism. Okay, so this is the definition of reductionism. So if we take the example of the generation of the electricity, okay, in the generation of electricity, if we are generating the electricity from the coal, then what is happening there? First one, the coal is converted into the coal is burned with the help of some energy. Then whatever the energy get generated due to that burning of the coal, we will get the heat energy there. Okay, and that heat energy is used to heat the water. Okay, with the help of that heat energy, the water is heated, and once the water get heated, its volume increases and it will get converted into the steam. Okay, and when it get converted into the steam, its volume increases, and that steam is passed through some smaller nozzle area, and output of that nozzle is directed towards the turbine. Okay, so when the steam passes through that nozzle, it will get directly imparted on the turbine, which will cause the turbine to rotate. Okay, so when that turbine gets rotated, its shaft get rotated, and the electric coils are wound around that shaft. Okay, and around that electric coil some magnets are placed. Okay, so when the electric coils are revolving, in that case, due to that electric and magnetic field, there is the generation of the electricity. Okay, according to the laws of Faraday, we will get the electricity at the outlet. Okay, so instead of what if we study these all processes combinedly? So first of all, what is happening in this, that first process in the conversion of coal into the electricity is coal is heated. Okay, coal gets heated and we get heat energy. Okay, we get the heat energy, and using that heat energy we heat the water. Water gets heated using this heat and gets converted into the steam. Okay, then increasing the volume. Then the third one, the steam passed through nozzle onto the turbine, which rotates the turbine So turbine shaft rotate on which wire is wound. And fifth one, due to magnet there is electricity generated. Okay, so in all these processes, these are the processes in the complex process, that is coal gets heated to get the heat energy. Okay, then water gets heated using this heat and gets converted into the steam, which increases the volume. Then this steam passes through nozzle onto the turbine, which rotates the turbine. So turbine shaft rotates on which wire is wound, and due to the magnet there is the electricity generated. So in this case, if we combinedly go for the study of this process of conversion of a coal energy, that is the chemical energy, into the electricity, then in that case it will be the very complex process. So instead of that, if we go by one, we can say here is the thermodynamic process. Okay, we have to study here thermodynamic law. Then here also thermodynamic law. Okay, we have to study. Then here there is the kinetic energy, conversion of the heat energy into the kinetic energy. Then here we get again heat energy into the kinetic energy. Okay, then here we get electromagnetic induction law. Okay, we get electromagnetic induction law here. Okay, so instead of going separately for this complex process, if we study this complex process combinedly, then it will be difficult. We have to apply all the laws combinedly. So instead of that, if we study each process separately, we can get here, we have to study here thermodynamics law. Then here again, in the second part, we have to study thermodynamics law. Then here we have to go for the law of the conversion of the heat energy into the kinetic energy. Okay, the heat energy, due to that heat energy, the steam is get generated, and due to that steam, we are increasing the volume of the steam, and that volume of the steam is get imparted on the turbine, which rotates the turbine. That is, what we are doing, we are changing the heat energy into the kinetic energy. Now that kinetic energy we are converting into the electricity, and during that we have to apply the electromagnetic induction law. Okay, we have to apply the electromagnetic induction law. So likewise, in reductionism, we can reduce the complex process into number of small constituents, and we can go for the study of these constituents separately, so that it will be easy for us to understand and it will be easy for us to work on it. Okay, so reductionism में क्या होता है, हम जो कुछ भी पूरी प्रोसेस होती है उसको छोटे छोटे पार्ट्स में डिवाइड करते हैं, और हम उसके ऊपर अलग अलग से स्टडी करते हैं. उसके जो कुछ भी लॉज है, उसके जो कुछ भी कॉज है, उन सबको हम अलग अलग से स्टडी करते हैं, और उनको स्टडी करते वक्त हम उसकी स्टडी का, उसके लॉज का दूसरे प्रोसेस पे क्या इफेक्ट होगा ये हम जान लेते हैं. यहाँ जैसे कि थर्मोडायनामिक्स लॉ से हमने केमिकल एनर्जी को हीट एनर्जी में कन्वर्ट किया, कोल की केमिकल एनर्जी को हीट एनर्जी में कन्वर्ट किया, फिर इस हीट एनर्जी को हमने यूज किया पानी को स्टीम में कन्वर्जन करने के लिए. फिर जब वो कन्वर्ट होता है तो फिर ऑटोमेटिकली वहां पे हमको थर्मल लॉ से वहां पे हमको स्टीम मिल जाती है, और उस स्टीम को हम जब छोटे नोजल से टरबाइन के ऊपर डालते हैं तब क्या होता है, उस प्रेशर की वजह से, क्योंकि ज्यादा वॉल्यूम रहता है, तो फिर उस ज्यादा वॉल्यूम की वजह से टरबाइन जो होता है वो घूम जाता है। जैसे कि हमने देखा है, हम जब झाड़ियों को पानी देते हैं तब अगर हम आगे से पाइप को दबाते हैं तो फिर क्या होता है, बहुत ज्यादा वॉल्यूम से पानी बाहर निकलता है। और अगर हम उसके आगे हाथ अपना रखते हैं तो फिर वहां पे हमको थोड़ा सा प्रेशर लगता है, थोड़ा सा फोर्स लगता है हमारे ऊपर। अगर हमने ऐसा हाथ रखा उसके ऊपर तो फिर क्या होता है, हमारा हाथ पीछे हट जाता है। वैसे ही जब हम उसके ऊपर स्टीम छोड़ते हैं टरबाइन के ऊपर तो फिर टरबाइन के ब्लेड्स घूम जाते हैं, और जब टरबाइन का ब्लेड घूमता है तब क्या होता है, टरबाइन के साथ साथ वहां पे उसका शाफ्ट भी घूम जाता है। और हमने क्या किया है, शाफ्ट के ऊपर वायर वोन करके रखी है। ओके, तो इस वायर के बाजू में हमने क्या किया है, एक मैग्नेट रखे, सभी बाजू में सर्कमफरेंशियल एरिया में हमने मैग्नेट रखे। तो फिर हमको पता है व्हाट इज द लॉ ऑफ इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेटिक फील्ड, व्हेन द wire inside the wire when magnet is rotated, then in that case the electric currents get generated inside that wire. Okay, so likewise we are using that process, the law of electromagnetic induction here, and we are rotating the wire in the magnet. Okay, so due to that phenomena the electric current gets generated in that wire and we can get the electricity there. Okay, so likewise we can convert the chemical energy of coal into the electricity. So for that process we have to follow the number of steps, and these smaller steps we can study one by one for our study purpose, for our easy purpose. Okay, so likewise we can study the reductionism. So this type of study of the phenomenon of the conversion of chemical energy into the electrical energy is known as the reductionism process. जब हम ऐसे छोटे छोटे पार्ट में डिवाइड करके उसका स्टडी करते हैं तो फिर ऐसे प्रोसेस को क्या बोलते हैं, इस तरह से स्टडी करने के प्रोसेस को क्या बोलते हैं, रिडक्शनिज्म। और यूनिफिकेशन में हम क्या करते हैं, अगर बहुत सारे फिनोमिनॉन्स हैं वो एक ही लॉ पे अगर काम कर रहे हैं, उन सब फिनोमिनॉन के पीछे अगर एक ही लॉ है तो फिर इन सब फिनोमिनॉन्स को हम कंबाइन करते हैं, उनका एक ग्रुप बनाते हैं, और उस ग्रुप को हम बोल देते हैं कि ए वाला ग्रुप सिर्फ इस लॉ के ऊपर ही काम करता है। जैसे कि हमने देखा, अगर एप्पल ऊपर से नीचे गिर रहा है, पानी ऊपर से नीचे गिर रहा है, अर्थ रिवॉल्व हो रही है सन के बाजू में, तो फिर इन सब के पीछे क्या इंपॉर्टेंट है, ग्रेविटी। Due to that gravity, these all phenomenons are working. So likewise we have made the group of the phenomenons and we say that these all the processes are working under one single law. Okay, so likewise we can divide all the phenomenons into either under the process of unification or either under the process of reductionism. Okay, so after dividing all the phenomenons under these reductionism or the unification, we can go for their study easily. We can understand these all phenomenons easily. Okay, so to study any phenomenon, to study or to understand any phenomenon, we have to either go by the process of unification or the process of reductionism, so that we can understand that phenomenon easily. Okay, so that's all from the principal thrust in the physics, the thrust areas of the physics. The two main thrust areas are the unification and the reductionism. Either we have to go by the unification or either we have to go by the reductionism, depending on that phenomenon. Either it is a complex one or the simple one. Okay, so likewise we have to select either it is under the unification process or under the reductionism process. Okay, so that's all from the principal thrust of the physics. Thank you.